This meeting is being recorded.
Hey everybody, here we go. This is episode 1. I think we're thinking maybe Shipmate self or the bullpen or the clubhouse. I'm not sure, but Scott and I are excited to be here with you all tonight and record our first episode.
Awesome, Jocko. And you know what? We were trying to think of a name. You and I were talking briefly. Maybe one of the players that tunes into this can help us come up with a pretty creative name for this.
Awesome. Yeah, guys. So if you get a chance and you want to throw something in the Facebook page as an idea, we're open to that. And just so you guys know, tonight we are just kind of winging it. This is episode 1. There's no real agenda, but often in life we're winging it anyway. There's no manuals. So hopefully this will be of some value and hopefully we don't go too long. But I thought I'd start out tonight by maybe leading in with Scott, asking him, you know, he has resurfaced. And kind of maybe, Scott, if you wouldn't mind giving us some insight into the why of resurfacing and maybe some things you hope for with this group that we're working with here.
Well, you know what, buddy, I wish, you know, when you say you and I've talked about, hey, why this group, man, and man, to make it as quick as I can to answer that question. I was never, and I'm still not, as you can see, you and my wife, Carrie, are teaching me more about tech stuff than I ever thought I'd learn, but I was never a big social media guy, not necessarily against it or anything like that, just never really dove into it. But always saw the value of the connection stuff. But didn't see the value of like people. I mean, some of it seems so phony to me. Maybe that's just what I was exposed to, but just the showing your life and pictures of yourself. And I just never understood any of that, all the comparing and all, and which we'll get into. I mean, there's something there, but the thing that got me was that I was, over the years, people were telling me things either through a text, only staying in touch with a couple players. And that was, every once in a while. And then I would hear from a guy that a player got married and then a player had a baby. And so it was really cool, but I was like, I really felt disconnected from the players and not, life goes on. I get that. I'm not talking about things would be the same per se as when we were together. But I just didn't feel good about it. And then on the negative side, I would hear, not negative, I guess the word, you might be able to help me with the word, on the more challenging or tough side, I'd hear about divorces and the loss of a child possibly. And then I would hear of suicide on more than one occasion. And I kept thinking to myself, and it was something really gnawing at me, that I need to reconnect with these players somehow, some way. And then this idea of a page came up, but man, it was daunting to me. I thought I'll never be able to figure that out. And then a year went by and another year went by. So it was for a few years. And then I thought, man, one incident in particular happened. It was a suicide. I'm not going to I would never discuss names, of course, or anything like that, but it hit home with me. And I went to the funeral and I thought, I got to do this. And the reason was, I look back in I don't know the years and the range, but the 20s and 30s and the 40s, man, were so freaking challenging, buddy. And I had no one to talk to, man. Sports was like, hey, you went out, you played. If you played well, you did your thing. If you didn't play well, whatever, but you were playing, and there wasn't much interaction with people or coaches or mentors. There was the odd guy that came into my life, so I will get into that maybe one day, but man, it was just a really challenging time. And then I thought, what about these guys? And the one thing that hit home, buddy, is a birthday thing came across the the page, you know, when you're told that it's a guy's birthday and he was 41. And I thought, wow, I coached a dude that's 41.
Yep.
And then I thought about where I was at 41.
Mm.
And man, and I just thought, I got to do something, man, just to connect. So that's what it was, if that makes sense. Reconnection, and that's why I did it. And man, it's been pretty cool, like what's been happening. And so that's, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think you bring up something that's really important and that we've kicked around a little bit is like when you think about athletes, you know, they often define themselves by playing baseball, right? Like maybe you played it once you were 5 years old, you played it all the way through college. Now you're 22 years old and you're just kind of dropped off the bus to figure out life, right? Your whole structure was, I'm an athlete. I hope to be a professional athlete. And all of a sudden there's that last day where you take your cleats off for the last time and there's no manual for life, and then you got to figure it out, right? And I think that's often a time when athletes really struggle because your whole sense of who you are was in this thing being an athlete, and now it's kind of taken away from you. And often I think people get really lost and disoriented. And I think like what you said, definitely over the years have had many phone calls from players of mine just wanting to check in or needing that space or a place to talk. And often for men, especially as we get older, we get kind of more isolated. We don't have as many social connections. And that's where loneliness, depression, anxiety, you know, some of these really dark places can come up. So I really appreciate that. And I'm kind of curious as well to kind of go to our second maybe topic is, you know, what are some things that you hope maybe for this space in terms of the players, in terms of what they share or how to best engage us, I guess, via maybe doing these small pods or on the Facebook posts, or I'm curious about that.
Well, kind of what the guidelines of it is, I'm the only administrator of that page. You are going to become one shortly to make sure we get stuff all, you know, so it'll be me and you. And then the players they seem to really, they would hit the messenger, you know, so don't laugh. You'll know what I'm talking about. So will they. I'm still not, guys are laughing right now when they do watch this. They'll think he hasn't changed much. Even though I am growing and I don't want to be that guy, but I've noticed a lot of guys use that messenger so no one can see their message, of course. I really don't want players posting a whole lot on there. And the only reason why was I just didn't want any agendas, man. I didn't want my religious boys on there thinking that that's the platform for that. I didn't want anybody. I didn't want any platforms. I didn't want any of that stuff on their agendas, regardless of from what walk of life, race, all the stuff. I wanted this to be a safe place. And a safe place just to check in when you felt like you wanted to check in. No one's asked, well, hey, are you on the page? Are you checking in? None of that, man. Just, hey, I really want to see what they're saying on there. I might be on once every 5 months. I might be on every day. So it's almost on it depends on the guy and what he needs, you know? And so that's been really cool. I've had a lot of feedback. As you know, with males, man, not to chase the rabbit here, but man, guys, they'll read stuff. It just takes them a long time to possibly reach out, man. And I totally get that. I mean, but I want them to know this is a safe place. And so, that's kind of how it's worked. That's kind of been the setup of the page. And now this with me and you, I wanted to branch out. I mentioned this before I even mentioned it to you. About a year ago, I asked somebody, what if I came on here on a video? Because then it would save me from typing, you know what I mean? And that too. So,
Yep.
But a lot of guys were down with that. And so we'll see. I'm thinking some guys will even relate more to this to see a face. Does that answer, Jocko, what you were saying?
And I'm curious also, like, are you okay with them reaching out to you individually via messenger? I think that might be the best thing as well.
Absolutely. One guy just told me about 2 weeks ago that he wanted to reach out a year ago.
Okay.
And it took him a year to finally reach out. And then he reached out through Messenger. But yeah, absolutely, man. They've got my phone number too. And then I'm going to want to make sure your information is on there that you're comfortable with. the guys just know, man, I've got these guys. I can shoot the breeze with them. I can call them up. I can text them. I can go on Messenger. All those, depending on their need.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something that's really important. And I know for me, I really have a hard time asking for help, right? And I think one thing in our relationship that you're really good at is you ask me if I'm doing okay. Because my job is to like help people, right? And I often forget that I need to ask for help too. And I think that's a skill that people need to develop, right? And I think us as men often are really bad at asking for help. We feel like it makes us look weak or we're not good enough. And I can totally identify with this, but I think it's been important in my journey to start to really say, hey, I got to ask for help when I need it, right? Because life's hard. There's just going to be times when you're going to face those dark nights or those hard seasons of life, and to be able to reach out is super important.
Yeah, buddy, you know what? I'm going to probably swear on this a few times, not purposely, but I'm going to be me and keep it real. Or these guys will know that I'm a fraud if I'm doing anything other than that. So, what's so cool is that I finally realized that, and this is what I said, and I think Rocco Rocco said something on when I said we are going to try this. Rocco said we should call it "Wake the Fuck Up, Bro." So he was hoping. So he's shooting for that. He's shooting for that. But that is, I mean, we'll get into that, what that means another time, and slowly go that way, I'm sure, because it has so much to do with it. But man, I've had like, when I'm open about stuff, and I'll share a couple stories before we close out today, but there's been some things where when I finally opened up, and I thought, man, I can't do this. Like, my whole life in the young age was to protect, and you cannot let anyone know how you feel inside. And I'm very open to tell you, and I've shared this with you, of course, but I carried anxiety and depression for as long as I could remember. And so what did I do with it? I covered it up, man. I covered it up in being someone I wasn't. I covered it up in behaviors. I covered it up, man. But that was no one can find this out. You know what I mean? And I did that right into my coaching career. And then I realized that the real power came from when I just opened up and said, man, this is me. This is who I really am. And I know that's hard for dudes, man. They don't want to do that, or they feel very vulnerable. But man, what a difference once you do. And then once you do, it gives a guy freedom to do that himself. And then you're on the road to healing and some recovery. This manhood journey, man, there is a lot of casualties that happen. And I mean, legitimate ones, like the extreme ones we talked about, but I'm talking about the casualties of guys that turn around and they're 45 and they've never questioned some things. They just didn't think they could. They didn't think they should. They didn't know how. They didn't know why. And I was one of those guys. I mean, totally asleep, dude. Totally not functioning too well as a young man.
And Scott, do you mind sharing just a little bit more there? Do you remember what kind of triggered you to take that risk and to start looking at yourselves, or to start opening up? I don't know if there's something you can point to exactly, but I'm curious, like maybe what was going on that really maybe helped that shift start, or I'm not sure.
Remember I told you some stories would come to me as we got going. Well, here's one. I wrote it down. It's exactly it. So way back in the day, man, and I'll try to make it quick. Way back in the day being Trinidad State Junior College, maybe first, second year, 33, 32. I could be off on my ages, but somewhere in that window. Some players did a skit, and these guys are going to cringe now because they know who they are. And it was really good. They did a skit. One of them was me. One of them was another coach, and they were having a discussion. And they were scared to show me at first because it was pretty personal. Like, the guy that played me had me down perfect. It was an amazing thing. It was very funny. It really was. But something hit me. Something hit me in a weird way that day.
Mm.
I looked at that when they left the room. I watched it by myself, and here's how old it was. It was on a VHS.
Oh man.
Yeah.
If anyone has that, please.
Oh yeah, and you know what? They might the guy, and I'll throw the guys under the bus. Kip Simon, and no one's surprised by that played with him, and Mike Winokur,
Mm.
who Mikey's on this page. Both of them are on this page, and both of them will see this. Mikey played me. Mike's a pastor now, so he's going to reap what he's reaping that. But it was very funny. But what they didn't get is it was life changing for me, and I kid you not. And why? It's the first time I saw what I was portraying, and it wasn't me. So what I was portraying to them wasn't me. And I knew that. And I didn't understand that back then, Jocko. So everything I say is always reflection. You know what I mean? Like I did not, what I'm telling you, I looked at it and knew something wasn't right. But what wasn't right, that's all I knew then. It wasn't right. But wasn't right. I was phony. I was, I was, man, I was playing and I knew it. And I thought, wow, that's how I portray myself. Um, that's how I come off with people. That's one story. Another one.
Well, Scott, can I linger there real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you give me some? I would love to hear like what kind of characteristics you would have described yourself. Who was this character?
Well, he was trying real hard to be a good coach, a good leader, but he had to act a lot tougher than he really was, and all business. And because he was scared shitless, man. That's the bottom line. I was scared shitless, and I was scared shitless someone was going to find out. And when these guys did this, they didn't realize I was feeling that way. I was busted. I was exposed, but they they didn't know that. They didn't know they exposed me. I was the only one that knew I was exposed to myself. And we'll talk about, you and I could run with that. You being a psychologist could run with that. And, but that was a big time. It was those type of things, mannerisms. They were doing mannerisms of my hands that I did.
Okay.
And man, gosh, I mean, I just thought seriously, I felt like a douchebag. You know what I mean? That's what I felt like.
Okay.
But they didn't mean nothing by it, and they didn't portray it that way. But that's interesting how I took it. And it was good, though. That was healthy for me to see that. Didn't understand it. That's 20, 22 years ago.
It was like a giant mirror was held up to you.
Absolutely. And I was just like, that's not me. But that's who I'm portraying myself to be. And man, that was eye-opening. The other one, buddy, was I was cutting. This was huge. I was cutting grass. I had just maybe 2 years on the job, 2 losing seasons, dealing with anxiety and depression, man, and I wanted out of there, dude. I wanted to run. I was looking for every reason to get out of there. Now this is reflection, because I knew I was in over my head, and I didn't want to I couldn't tell nobody that. So I thought, but I couldn't tell anybody that. I'm cutting the grass. This hit home, man. I'm like, how do I do this? I was honest with myself. I said, I don't know how to do this. Like, I put up the front. Everyone thinks, hey, this guy, he's this, he's a competitor. One guy called me something one day, and I said, dude, I was I forget how he called it, but I was just like, dude, that's a nice word for emotionally unstable. You know what I mean? And so I was cutting the grass, and I remember thinking, I'm done. I can't do this. Had 2 losing seasons. I didn't see any growth. Of course, that's what I was evaluating it off of. I remember thinking, I need to leave. And then it hit me as I was cutting the grass. I remembered I can see myself right now as I tell you that story. Piece of shit mower on a middle of a summer, probably a 95-degree day in Trinidad, Colorado. That should tell someone enough, but full of anxiety. And something spoke to me. Now, I told you that I won't use the name God in this. I don't want this to ever be a religious thing. We'll talk about that another time. That might be a topic for us down the line. but you can call it that if you want. You can call it the universe. You can call it source. You can call it creator, because I don't want to alienate anybody. I had a religious time in my life. And we'll get into that another time. It's very interesting when I say those words. But so whatever spoke to me inside, whoever inside of me, basically said, you got to do, if you're going to do this, you have to do it a different way.
Mm.
And so I remember as I was cutting the grass, and I didn't hear this audibly, thank goodness. This was inside, because if I'm starting to hear her on the outside, man, you know what I'm saying? I'll be calling you right after we get off here. So I remember asking to myself through that, do what different? And it basically, it was said, it's got to be about the players.
Mm.
It can't be about you. I got that. I said, so how do I do that? And then that was such a turning point, because it was like, I even said, well, I could tell it was going to be about integrity, character, and those things. It's got to go that way. It's got to go towards their life. But I said, and I was honest, I don't know anything about integrity or character. I don't have any.
Mm.
And what I do is very little. So I was, I think of those statements, like I was being honest with myself. Like, how do I teach someone something I'm not?
Mm.
And it was given to me on this. I'll teach you as we go.
Mm.
And then you teach them.
I love it.
And that was it. So I just started doing it little bit by little bit. And to do that, I had to open up about who I was. And I even thought in especially your failures.
Wow.
That word failures doesn't, I mean, I have a different word, and it's not the positive word and all that. I just, failure, what does that mean, man? So and that's another maybe topic, because not a lot of, guys have a problem with that, but those were two major shifts. Awesome. That were huge.
Yeah, and we are out of time. We want to keep this to 20 minutes, but I think just to kind of summarize some of the things that you said tonight that I think were really important are kind of identifying a bit of a false self, or this character called Scott, with that you realized, and then really like saying, okay, I need to step back and be introspective and really start looking at this, what is this? And realizing I don't have all the tools I need, but I know that something inside of me is saying I need to start looking towards caring for these players, character, authenticity. I heard these are really kind of some key words that I think that you would maybe say to the people listening tonight is like, it's worth, the unexamined life is not worth living, that you should really take the time to stop and look at yourself, look at this journey, and critically reflect, I think is some things that I heard.
That's it, buddy. This has been great, man. I always heard it said, and then you maybe close this up, buddy, but and I appreciate you jumping on board with me on this, buddy. I think the world of you, and those guys know that. You got guys checking in that don't know you, but a lot do, because you rode shotgun with me, Waterloo, Iowa, CCU, just for 1 year. But there's a lot of those guys on here. I used to say this, it was said by a guy's grandpa, who is a mentor to me and a neat guy, but he didn't, this isn't his quote, but he said, he'd laugh because he said it's Southern wisdom, but be who you is, because if you ain't who you is who you ain't. And I thought, that's me. That's what those stories I gave you.
That's so funny you say that. I had that written down as my last quote on my sheet tonight, which is wild. But yeah, thanks. I appreciate this. I'm excited that we get to do this together. And for the players who watch this, also let us know what topics you like to hear about. There are so many areas that we can discuss, but we want this to be led by you. So anything that you think that would be helpful, whether it's fatherhood, dealing with depression, anxiety, mental health, how do you deal with relationships, anything that you guys want us to talk about, we really want to be able to discuss those things. So either send Scott a text or an instant message on Facebook, however that works, or me, and we're happy to keep hopefully bringing some good content your way. So anyway, thanks for listening tonight, and we'll see you guys next time.